is a report out that Vince McMahon looking to promote again. In fact, he tried to buy Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. Kind of ironic report lands this week as they are up in Fort Worth getting ready for an event. And the man that birthday report, a good friend of the show, joining me on the hotline from the Boston Herald and also from Undisputed on Substack, a great blog you need to subscribe. It is my good friend Justin Barrasso. Justin, how are you?
I'm doing well, Stu. Thank you for having me. It's always honor to be back on the air with you.
I always enjoy talking to you. So let's talk about this report you dropped. So apparently Vince McMahon tried to buy Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. You mentioned recent. How recent was it?
That's a good question. Timing's a little hazy. It's within the last couple of months. But it's also a tough time for the BKFC team because they are really, really having some growth, right? David Feldman brought Conor McGregor in as a co-owner in Conor's, but I know Conor's controversial, but Conor's done nothing but help the brand. So this is right in their biggest growth period. So you can understand why there'd be hesitancy to lose control of the brand and give. Again, I think David's quote was very telling. I understand why Vince would want creative control but it doesn't make sense for them right now where they are. And that to me, not to bury the lead, Stu, but that to me is why just a feeling we're going to see Vince back to where he always was. I'd be shocked if this doesn't end with him promoting some sort of wrestling, especially knowing that he wants to promote again.
Well, yeah, I believe so. So it sounds like from what you said and from what the report said, it sounds like the issue wasn't financial. It was simply a matter of giving up creative control, giving up kind of the direction of the brand to it. Is that the feeling you got?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if you know David at all, if you covered David Feldman, who's a really interesting person to cover with BKFC. He's mortgaged the house and, spent a lot of his life savings to make this company work. It really is, in many ways, I think there's some similarities between David and Vince in the 80s when Vince believed in the World Wrestling Federation so much that he was going to find a way to bring it to new heights. And I think that's what how David feels about BKFC, about Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship. They just need the right star or two to build around. Vince had Hulk Hogan and worked around him, but I think that's 100% right. He did not want to. It wasn't a financial issue.
Okay. All right. So then let's talk about Vince. So you mentioned that there are several within the combat sports realm that believe that Vince will be involved in pro wrestling, probably promoting. I guess the big question right now is how much hesitancy is there given the lawsuit, the Janelle Grant lawsuit, the investigations from the SEC. How much hesitancy is there to, work with Vince or to invest alongside Vince?
That's a great question. I think that he'd find wrestlers. It's everything else. And he's got talent. A lot of the executives who left WWE in 2024 are with Vince now with his new company or his new investment firm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We're going to see how much weight his name still holds if this is the route he wants to go. But Stu, I think you hit the nail on the head. There's so many questions and so much gray area and the lawsuit and so many other problems that branch off from that. It would make a lot more sense to buy an existing promotion. But those really don't exist anymore. WWE has the working agreement with TNA.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
Tony Khan bought Ring of Honor a couple of years ago. AAA, which I don't know if Vince would have bought AAA, but AAA's now been acquired, and that's been the works for a while by WWE. New Japan could probably use an influx of cash, but I don't know if Vince is going to buy. I don't know. There just aren't a lot of promotions out there that are ready for Vince to buy and take over. That to me it makes sense that he come back to wrestling. That's the part that makes sense. But the part that doesn't make sense is everything around it. The sponsorships, the advertisers, the broadcasting, the streaming,
You're
the
right.
promotion itself.
Yeah.
Everything about it doesn't make sense other than Vince coming back to wrestling.
Well, and you're right because I mean, yes, most of the name, just about all the name wrestlers are tied to WWE or AEW or TNA or Ring of Honor or wherever, MLW, whatever. The other issue I see is the simple fact the man is 79 years old. He's not, this isn't the 80s. This isn't Vince trying to build his brand off the territories back in the 80s. He's 79 years old. And I guess the other, so I'm thinking of that. Plus, is there any notion as to what kind of shape he's in health-wise?
The last time we saw him publicly, I think, was a Knicks game, and he looked good. But I don't think we've seen him since in the public view. Speaking with David Feldman about that meeting with Vince, he said he looked great. He sounded great. He was very serious to do business. David said it was an honor for him to be in the room with him, with Vince McMahon. And I from promoter to promoter, I can see why that was such a momentous occasion for him. Obviously, Vince is no stranger to controversy, and that's ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you make valid everything. That's why, again, I mean, time's of the essence. He's 79. It does seem like he's determined. I've been following the Vince story for a while, and I didn't want to run it because it was missing something. It was missing that, kind of that verification that he wanted back in. Well, the fact that he wanted to basically run BKFC shows that he is committed to coming back. How that plays out, we don't know. But it just seems like Vince wants back in the game.
Well, okay, so then, then it leads to, so we talked about the wrestler, all the name wrestlers are signed. But there are those, even signed, that have positive feelings for Vince. So, and I mean, the first name that comes to mind is the man that's going through his retirement tour right now in John Cena. So John Cena retires at the end of 2025. If Vince somehow gets a wrestling promotion up, does he have a chance to sign somebody like John Cena?
So I can't and I won't speak for John. Imagine that scenario. I will say, and the conversations have been off the record, so I'll always respect that,
right?
Honor that. But I spoke to many superstar wrestlers currently in WWE, currently in AEW, and to a man, they all said they think the world of Vince. They wouldn't be where they, I'd say at least a dozen. I wouldn't be where I am without him. That sort of thing. Now, I don't know, would people actually go sign and work for him? I don't know. I think that you'd need something. And this is just me speculating, Steve. This is not inside info.
Right.
But I think you'd need something like you'd need somebody in the ring to say, I've always wanted to be in the ring with, I'm just going to use the name, Steve Austin.
Right.
Well, if you had Steve Austin be your show's commissioner, when somebody signs, they could say, well, I get to work with Vince and I get to work alongside my childhood hero and Steve Austin. Something like that. And I'm not saying Steve would do it, but I think they'd need something like that. You'd need some kind of draw, or you'd get a Cena type, and then the wrestlers would follow. People would follow. But that's a big if. And again, where are they? Do they start their own streaming service? Do they have their own network? Are they connected still with advertisers and networks? Mm-hmm. There are just so many questions, and it feels like, I mean, the idea is very compelling. Vince coming back to wrestling, right? What would happen next? But then you look at the details, and it's like, man, this makes no sense. He would be much better off buying an existing brand, except there really aren't many of those, if any, out there.
Right. You're absolutely right. So then I think about the final couple years of his run in WWE. the reports were out there. It was, for lack of a better term, erratic. Tearing up scripts at the last minute, changing things on the fly just because it amused him. I mean, is there any thought about, if he got a wrestling promotion, let's just throw it out there. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. Let's say he goes after Major League Wrestling, and Court Bauer says, "All right, Vince, you're in." Is he going to be, the final say on the creative? And again, thinking about those last couple of years with as erratic as it was, I got to imagine in wrestlers' heads, that's got to play into their thinking somehow.
I agree, but if you're not being used, and the problem now is in WWE's got a very compelling product. I think AEW does too, and they're building to All In. But if you're not, where you want to be on the card, I think the grass is always greener.
Yeah.
So I think he'd have that going for him. And Vince has always been able to draw talent. Now, granted, he was doing it from a position of power, but I think he could. I just think there's so few major spots out there, key spots, prominent positions, that I think you could. And wrestling's a unique field in the sense that you could be the best athlete, but you might not get over. You could be the best talker, but not given the mic enough because the promoter or the booker doesn't give you that chance. I don't know. I think that I don't think that would be the issue. I think he would get people to sign if everything else was up. And there's a lot of ifs in there. Stu, are you anywhere near Lubbock, Texas?
No. Lubbock is probably about 5 or 6 hours north of me.
All right, so it reminds me a little. The reason I ask, it reminds me a little bit of Bobby Knight.
Yes,
and obviously a well-established or an icon of the field.
Yeah,
Bobby Knight leaves Indiana under controversy, and then he goes to Texas Tech. Yeah, you can see some connective tissue here with Vince. It's fun at first, and then where does it go? And I think that would be the problem if Vince started a promotion, or maybe he's better off just running shows like they did a couple big events. There'd be no weekly television. You could use that pay-per-view model. Again, this is all speculation.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't see how feasible it is, because you just mentioned it too. Creative was erratic at best during his final stretch in WWE.
Yeah, well,
I don't know how you work around that.
I don't either. Talk with Justin Barrasso from the Boston Herald. Before I let you go, Justin, let's talk a little King and Queen of the Ring. We know the semifinals are set. Randy Orton versus Sami Zayn. Cody Rhodes taking on Jey Uso. And then the Queen of the Ring, Asuka, taking on Alexa Bliss. And Jade Cargill taking Roxanne Perez. Let's pull out your crystal ball. Tell me who ends up being King and Queen of the Ring and when the night is over, June 28th in Saudi Arabia.
I just don't see Cena losing the belt to Ron Killings on SmackDown Friday. I'm really curious how they position that match, because Killings is red hot and you want to keep that going. I can't see Cena losing the belt to Punk at Night of Champions. I think the fact that it's in Saudi Arabia gives WWE, gives Triple H a little more flexibility. You're not going to have a crowd, probably, if that crowd was Chicago or Philly or, I don't know, pick a million other cities, Pittsburgh or, I don't know. I think a lot of crowds would be upset, could be very upset if that finish didn't go right. I think they're going to have flexibility with maybe not the internet, but with the crowd itself in Saudi if you did a controversial finish. So I think Cena keeps the belt beyond Night of Champions. I actually think Sami Zayn wins the King of the Ring. I think they build SummerSlam around Zayn, and this is just my opinion, John Cena. And I think that eventually leads to Sammy's heel turn. Maybe I just want him to work with Paul Heyman again because they work so well together in the Bloodline. But to me, Sammy fits the ethos of that new dangerous alliance that Paul Heyman's running with Seth Rollins and Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed. So I really like to see Sammy part of it. and what better way to be frustrated that he can't win the world title and then he can join. So I actually think Sammy's going to win. So we'll see how Friday night goes with SmackDown. It's a really good SmackDown on Friday. And for the women, I think it's Jade Cargill's moment, especially with Naomi having the briefcase. Maybe she cashes in after Jade wins the belt. There's a lot you can do there, but I think they've got breakout stars there with Jade and Naomi. They've come close with Naomi a couple of times, but I think as a heel right now with the briefcase, she's great. And I think Jade wins Queen of the Ring.
Yeah, I think you're right. Justin Barrasso, hey, tell everybody about Undisputed.
So time flies. I spent a decade with Sports Illustrated, and it was time for me to branch off and do my own thing. So I left last summer, and I really enjoy the freedom, the flexibility to cover the way I want to cover professional wrestling and MMA. There are multiple stories a week. It's kind of a newsletter setup on Substack, which I like, and I like following other writers on the site too. You get an email every time one of your authors, I write a piece, you get it in your email box. So I think that's very convenient. There are paid options, there are free options. So it's a lot of fun to cover, just like used to. It's such a joy to cover this, to cover pro wrestling, to cover MMA. So yeah, it's undisputed.substack.com. There's a Monday podcast, a Tuesday piece, the Wednesday column, the Week in Wrestling, which I've been doing for almost 10 years now. Friday's the MMA column, the MMA notebook, Sunday's the Sunday notes. We just added in, I think they're great. We just added in the guys from Wait Times, and they it's data collection. They time out the wait times in between matches. So like tomorrow, Thursday, we'll have a piece up. They'll look at the wait times from the 2015 Night of Champions, the 2023 Night of Champions, and we'll kind of compare that after the Night of Champions this year, because the wait times have really grown between matches. So that's fun. I think it's just a lot of fun to have the freedom to do what we're doing. And we've got a really solid crew backing us of loyal readers, and I'm super grateful for that. So, undisputed.substack.com, and with the Boston Herald as well. So it's a nice balance. But, man, I just love to cover this, Stu, and I'm grateful to do it.
And I'm grateful you keep doing it. Justin Barrasso from the Boston Herald and Undisputed. Justin, I appreciate it, man. Great read. All the best to you. Hopefully we will connect soon, okay?
Maybe this summer at All In.
Oh, that sounds good. All right, talk to you soon.
Thanks, Stu.